Hi, folks. Welcome to the 28th presentation hosted by AlmonTravel and CARP. And tonight, Atlantic Tours and Travel, held every Tuesday at 6:30 Atlantic time, now into late June. Please check the CARP Travel website for the latest updated information. As in the past, this presentation is going to be recorded and will be on the CARP Travel website shortly after. Do want to mention that as the presentation goes on, please note that there is a place where you can ask questions. Certainly feel free to do that, and we'll get to those at the end. A little bit about us. We've been in business since 2003, very close to 18 years now. One of the focuses that we have had is destination weddings, which translates into group travel. So we have quite a bit of experience with group travel and can help you with that. That is different than FIT or individual bookings. Also doing destination weddings, we certainly can arrange anniversaries or special occasions for extended family and friends. Our experience with destination weddings in the Caribbean area means that we have a lot of experience with resorts down in that area, and we certainly can recommend good family resorts or adult-only resorts. We also specialize in Florida travel with the emphasis on theme parks, Disney, Universal Studios, SeaWorld, Busch Gardens, among others. Very large places to visit, and you want to be organized for that. Otherwise, you'll end up doing a lot of aimless wandering around. River cruises, one of the particular specialties that we have. We've done 10 different itineraries around the world, 2 in Vietnam, 1 in China. We've done Egypt. We've done several in Europe. And we've done Mississippi River cruise on a paddle wheeler and have lots of experience with that. Would be happy to help you. Ocean cruises, try to take the most popular itineraries that we feel guests would be interested in so that we can talk about them from a personal perspective. Hawaii, Mediterranean, the 3 different Caribbean itineraries, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and of course, Alaska. So travel conditions, we have had a bit of a shocker here in Nova Scotia after the last several days. I guess it was an event waiting to happen. I know that I felt a little bit smug myself looking around at what's been happening in the rest of Canada and seeing how well we were doing in Nova Scotia. But this is the reality. And vaccinations, I think, are going to be the answer to this. And my understanding is that by the end of September, pretty well everybody in Nova Scotia should have been vaccinated, and that will help develop what they call a herd situation where most people have been vaccinated. There's a very good chance that those haven't will not be exposed to it. So it also will, I think, open up the world to us to travel. Now, one of the things we are talking about the world, one of the things that we're going to be dealing with in this presentation is not the world. We're going to stay local, and Richard's going to talk to us about what's available to us in the Atlantic provinces with a focus on Newfoundland and Labrador. We're working on several presentations that will focus on solo travel and also women's only travel. Please keep in touch, and I can pass on information as we develop that. Also, as I say, every presentation is certainly very helpful. If you folks if you enjoyed the presentations, please spread this amongst your friends and your family so that we can have an improving viewership. My connection with CARP is through Bill Van Gorder, who is the COO and Chief Policy Officer for CARP National. Very busy man. I had a chance to talk with him just back last week and organize a special presentation for another group that he belongs to, which is Nordic Walking Poles. He and I, Bill and I, have been involved together for about 5 years on a charitable institution that he was one of the 2 founders of, 100 Men Who Give a Damn. As a result of my participation on the board of that, we got to know each other quite well, and Bill got me to book a couple of trips for him, which he enjoyed, and he also was happy with our experience. booking him and looking after him. So we know each other on a couple of different levels. And when he asked us if we wanted to become the official travel agency of CARP Nova Scotia, I, of course, said yes. So I'd like right now to introduce you to Richard Arnold, president of Atlantic Tours and Travel. Richard and I have been talking about travel in general over the last several weeks. And I've been taking some of his webinars and webinars that he and his group are associated with, learning about different destinations. I find it very interesting. Anyway, his touring company can do coach tours almost worldwide. But we decided, particularly in light of our present COVID situation, that we might want to focus on local touring. So that's day tours in and around Nova Scotia and short visits. But the crown jewel of our presentation this evening is going to be a 13-day visit to our sister province, Newfoundland and Labrador. So Richard, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Well, thank you, Danny. I'm thrilled that you've reached out to me, and we had met a number of years ago, and so it took COVID to get us together, but I'm always thrilled to talk about Atlantic Canada. Tell you a little bit about Atlantic Tours. We've been in business for 52 years now. I haven't been there all of that time, but 34 of them, and I had the great pleasure to purchase the company along with my business partner, Gary, 12 years ago. And our biggest market is bringing the world to see Atlantic Canada, but we also take Atlantic Canadians to see the world as well. And so I always say our bread and butter is the beauty that we have right here in our own backyard. And to jump right over, Newfoundland and Labrador is certainly one of those beauties, one of my favorite places to go. I brought up the map here for you to have a look at, not knowing where some of the recorded people might be from, but it's always good to position yourself and to see where the island of Newfoundland is and the big land above it. So without further ado, Newfoundland and Labrador group tours, and we're going to concentrate on, like I said, our main group tour. And here's a better view of the map. It just doesn't show the maritime provinces. It's like they don't exist. But here you see how big Newfoundland and Labrador is. I often refer to it as the Alaska of the East when I'm selling to the world to come here. I said, you know, the biggest difference for me, having been to Alaska a number of times, I would never say don't go to Alaska, because you should. It's one of those bucket list places that you need to go. But Newfoundland and Labrador has a lot of similarities, and right here in our own backyard. In the spring, of course, we have the icebergs and the whales and the puffins. And as you see here, we this year have a special departure we put together on August the 14th. It's a no-fly option where we leave from here, go over and come back to here, all by motor coach. Normally our tour goes one direction, where we end in St. John's and we fly home. On a regular year, we have 12 guaranteed departures that start in early June and run right up until early September that go over to Newfoundland and Labrador. And we also have shorter versions of this trip. So there's an option for a 1 week version and a 1 week version. And some of the people that go don't have time to do 2 weeks. So, you know, we can certainly fill that in as well for everyone. What you're seeing here is Citadel Hill, and our tour departs from Halifax. So in a regular year, we would include an overnight in Halifax, no activities, just the overnight, a welcome reception, and then a free morning, and off we go. So we can still add that to anyone that's outside of Halifax, but with this one that's going over and back, we decided that we would skip the overnight in Halifax, just get on the motor coach. And what you're seeing here is one of our beautiful deckled motor coaches. We don't actually own motor coaches, but we chartered them from Coach Atlantic, and they are gracious and work with us to allow us to wrap a couple of them. We follow all public health protocols with loading, unloading, masking on board. There's even partitions on the motor coach as well, which you know, separate your seat from the other seats. So we've covered all the bases. And that first day, we actually leave Halifax, we head up to beautiful Cape Breton, and we do a nice dinner in Sydney before getting on the motor coach. So, you know, it's a leisurely day. We don't leave Halifax until midday, simply because we do the overnight ferry from Port aux Basques, or from North Sydney to Port aux Basques. And that ferry is a very comfortable boat, and they slow it down at night. So you have a full cabin included. So if The cabins are very typical of ferry cabins. There's usually 2 upper berths and 2 lower berths. And you'll be in your room by yourself, whatever the configuration happens to be. So if you're a couple traveling together, you'll have that accommodation. And like I said, very comfortable. You'll get to sleep as we cross. And when we get up in the morning, we'll be in Port aux Basques, Newfoundland. And we actually disembark the ship and go out and have breakfast in Port aux Basques to get everyone's land legs again in case you have any issues. And that way you don't have to get up as early as well. But we sail at 11:30 at night and usually get into Port aux Basques somewhere around 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, then off for breakfast. Then we're going to head to the Codroy Valley en route to beautiful Corner Brook, Newfoundland, where you'll see these kind of views if it's a fall departure. But in the summer, the visuals are quite stunning with the mountains and the valleys and the varying shades of green. You know, the Newfoundland I always often refer to as the far east of the Western world, that authentic beauty. You're going to get to see that throughout this trip, especially on this particular day, because we're going to head off to Port aux Choix, Newfoundland. And Port aux Choix is on the northern peninsula. So today we're covering a lot of territory, but what you're going to see is beautiful mountains and fjords on your right and the open water views on your left. There's really not much obstructing your view simply because those trees are so old and so small from the salt spray that you can see over them very easily in a motor coach. So as you travel through Grossmore National Park, we're going to head up to Port aux Choix, which is the National Historic Site, and that historic site pays tribute to the archaic Indians. So there's a dig there. It's a beautiful setting, a nice museum. It has a beautiful lighthouse, kind of a reminiscent landscape of Peggy's Cove in some respects, but it's the northern shrimp capital of the world. So it's a great time to try the little sweet shrimp. Say cold to the water, those small shrimp are very tasty. The other thing that the hotel that we stay at, the Sea Echo Motel, is family owned. Very much pride in looking after the property. You'll meet the owners. They'll probably be the ones taking your luggage in because we include luggage handling, all of those kind of things. And on the menu, they often have moose or caribou or Arctic char, all of those delights that are available along with everything else. But like I said, there'll be an option here for the northern shrimp. From Port aux Choix, then we're going to head the next morning over to Labrador. We're one of the few companies that actually go to the big land. Here's the ferry you'll be crossing over on. And we go from St. Barbe, Newfoundland, over to Blanc-Sablon, Quebec. And when you arrive, you're in Quebec for a few minutes before we go back into Labrador. And then we're going to head up to the beautiful village community of Red Bay. And Red Bay was, I guess, the first industrial site, if I was to use the proper terminology, because that's where they harvested the whales. The Basque fishermen came over here to harvest the beautiful whales that we all remember today. But in those days, that's where they got the oil. So much of Europe's oil to light those lanterns came from Port aux Basques, Newfoundland. They had quite the facility. This is Red Bay. I say Port aux Basques, Newfoundland. Red Bay, Newfoundland. And Red Bay is not only a National Historic Site, but it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it's a UNESCO site because of that first industrialization in North America as far as the harvesting of the whales. Another beautiful view with Sailor's Island off there. And, you're looking out towards the Atlantic, and this is Iceberg Alley. So if icebergs are important to you, June, early July are the best times for icebergs, but the last number of years they've even lasted into August. But Iceberg Alley comes down the coast of Labrador and then shoots off along the coast of Newfoundland. So we actually spend the night over in Labrador at the Northern Lights Inn in Blanc-Sablon. And then we head back to the island of Newfoundland and head up to St. Anthony. What you're seeing here is another visual of the National Historic Site, the inside of Red Bay. And like I said, it's very well described. You'll get some time you can even go out to the island as well There's options for all of that. And usually we also stop at Point Amour Lighthouse on the way back to our hotel. And that's one of the tallest lighthouses in North America. A great visual point again to see the icebergs rolling by. But when we're back to Newfoundland, we're going to head up towards St. Anthony for overnight. But en route, we're going to stop at Lanso Meadows National Historic Site and another UNESCO World Heritage Site. It happens to be the first UNESCO World Heritage Site in our region, and it tells the story of the Vikings when they first came. You'll actually see the original mounds, and then there's the reconstructed mounds that are part of the museum as well, so you can see what they look like inside. You will see a nice video. We often show the video on the motor coach for a lot of these sites, simply allowing you more time to explore when we're at the site. But they actually have the videos also available at the sites, and we also include a guide at the sites. We'll take you out on a walking tour of the facility, tell you about the life, and you're looking at some Vikings here and the mounds that you actually see. And of course, one of the other things that is very popular in this area is moose. They seem to know that they're protected on the National Historic Sites. I always say, if you haven't seen a moose on your drive up, which will be rare, moose and caribou are so prevalent throughout. But here they often are standing, grazing, and you can see them all around Lanso Meadows. Little guy here, this is a picture from their very famous commercials, the award-winning commercials. If you ever have a chance to go on YouTube and look at the Newfoundland commercials, they are phenomenal. You see some playing right on the TV now, and every year they change them up and do an amazing job. They're the envy of the rest of Canada and many other spots in the world. When we leave Lanso Meadows, then we head down to the Dark Tickle. The Dark Tickle has the beautiful Newfoundland dogs. That's one of the reasons to visit there. But they're an economy museum that tells the story of the flora and fauna, and more importantly, all those delicacies that we like bake apple and partridge berry and blueberry. You can buy the preserves there. They also make homemade chocolate there. So it's a chance for some shopping, but we don't stop for just the shopping. We stop to actually learn about the berries and fruit and the indigenous items. Now, here's some of the moose that you should see along the way. I always say there's more moose than people on the west coast of Newfoundland. It is certainly a stunning view. And when we come all the way up the coastline, like I said, and often standing off in the distance, you'll see them in a pond, in a field. I've often seen black bear as well. Almost always see caribou. And of course, the other thing that you will see if you're in any of our tours in the summer is the puffins. Now we're overnight in St. Anthony at the Haven Inn, or the Avon Inn if you're a Newfoundlander. And from there, you're going to go out on a boat tour. This is Northern Discovery Boat Tours. They actually have iceberg ice, so you'll actually have iceberg ice in your drink so that you can actually taste it. You're going to hopefully see some whales. This is one of the favorite spots for whale watching. And it's one of the best spots for icebergs. So, and then if you add the puffins in there, I always say it's a quadruple crown instead of a triple crown to get all those beautiful items in there. There's many different species of whale, but the largest concentration of humpback whales in the world you will find in Newfoundland and Labrador. And people don't realize from away how big Newfoundland and Labrador is. It's actually the size of Japan. It's the size of the maritime provinces multiplied by 3, and it's the size of the state of California, just to give you some relevance to the actual land size. So, those that do self-drives, we always kind of discourage it. You're better off on a motor coach than you are out exploring on your own. The Grenville Historic Mission, Sir Wilfrid Grenville was an American, came from the New York area, but he was instrumental in doctoring in the North. This museum pays tribute to his incredible story. Just across from here is also the hospital. The murals in the hospital are worth visiting, and also Grenville's home is across the street as well. So we do a visit here. They show a nice film. They also have a wonderful Newfoundland gift shop like they always do. And the museum, once again, guides, and you can explore on your own, but it is amazing the amount of work. When we leave St. Anthony, now we're going to head down to beautiful Grossmore National Park, where we're going to spend 2 nights in Cowhead at the Shallow Bay Motel, located right on a beach. The sunsets are spectacular. spectacular. But across the street is the Gross Morn Theater, where you're going to be able to go. They have 2 productions every night telling the story of Newfoundlanders and the hardships they faced in either the fishery or life in general. It's amazing how many locals go to the show, so you'll be sitting amongst the locals. In fact, the locals are all given free tickets with the caveat if they can sell them, they may need to go another night. Another nice thing we do in Grossmore National Park is Broom Point fishing premises. This tells the story of the fishery. The guides here are phenomenal, but this is the view that you're getting going up and down that entire northern peninsula. So it's about 5 hours up and 5 hours down when you cover this. And this is the kind of stunning view you get on one side. And this is the view from the other side. This is Western Brook Pond. And Western Brook Pond is one of the landlocked fjords where there's a boat tour. And we're the only company that I know of that offers both in our programming. So when we go over, you have the choice of doing Western Brook Pond or Bond Bay Fjord. The challenge with Western Brook Pond, you have to be able to walk. It's a 45-minute walk in and a 45-minute walk out to go on the boat. There's no way to get a drive in. So that's why it's been highly requested. Now, Bond Bay Fjord is every bit is beautiful. It's not a landlocked fjord. You can see Gross Morn Mountain in the background. It has an opening into the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the Strait of Belle Isle, so you can actually see whales in here. There's always eagles every time I'm there. Once again, stunning views of both Gross Morn Mountain as well as the tablelands. The boat that we're on here is a catamaran style boat. They have entertainment on board. So I always say, everyone says, what's your favorite? And I always say, oh, it's a real hard toss-up. I mean, on the Western Brook Pond, you're going to learn about the topography, where on this one, you're going to have fun and see the beautiful views. But here's the tablelands. This is why it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, another UNESCO World Heritage Site, because it's the only spot in the world, or one of the few spots, I should say, in the world where you can pick up and hold in your hand a piece of the Earth's mantle. That is the Earth's mantle. Nothing will ever grow on it, just a big rusty mountain. And the deposits you see on the outskirts is that over centuries, enough soil has deposited itself there to have a little bit of green growth, but absolutely stunning. And while we're there also, we're going to go to Lobster Cove Lighthouse. The views from here back towards Rocky Harbor and across the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the Strait of Belle Isle are phenomenal. And they do some wonderful presentations here that you'll enjoy. There's always activities going on. And like I said, you're just towering on the hillside overlooking Rocky Harbor. Another beautiful community. We stay in Cow Head, about 20 minutes away, but they're both stunning and both good opportunities. The other thing now we're going to do is leave the west coast of Newfoundland and start heading east. And we're going to go through a lot of trees today. The inner part of Newfoundland has a lot of trees, but we're going to get to Grand Falls and then on to Gander. And Gander has the North American Aviation Museum, and that pays tribute to Gander and its importance as the crossroads of America when all the transatlantic flights had to refuel somewhere. And the flights today still go up over Labrador and over the north and down across to Greenland and Iceland when they're going to Europe. And this was a refueling station. And who can talk about Gander without talking about Come From Away? Back in 2001 when 9/11 happened, this is the story of the 39 planes that ended up in Gander, and everyone opened up their home and welcomed everyone. And that musical has award-winning musical in New York, has now toured much of the world. When I was in Australia a couple of years ago, it had opened in Melbourne, Australia. It's in London, and just an absolutely heart-wrenching story and loving story about a community that opened their homes and made friendships for life. Now, when we leave Gander, because we've overnighted in Gander at Simbad's, we're going to go to the beautiful fishing community of the outport of Twillingate. Twillingate is stunning, once again on Iceberg Alley, a great spot to view the majestic icebergs floating by, to see the whales right from the shoreline. And of course, it's a small little peninsula with 2 harbors and just a stunning spot to go. Here's one of the views you're going to see when you're there as you look out over the Atlantic. And then while you're there, we'll visit the church, the museum, as well as the lighthouse. some free time to explore and wander around and take those majestic pictures. The lighthouse, like I said, is beautiful, and once again, towering on top of the rock and overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. And on the way from Twillingate back towards Clarenville, we're going to stop at the Prime Berth Fishing Exhibit. It's one of the favorite marked attractions on the trip. This is a real fisherman. This was a whale carcass, that a dead whale that washed ashore. He got permission to have it as a site, at his site, but he will fill out a cod, show it how it's all done, show how the oil is collected, and talk about the fishery, a hands-on experience where basically you're talking to a real live fisherman, and just a beautiful spot. And later in the day, we'll be visiting Terra Nova National Park on the East Coast. The views from here are beautiful, very different topography than you saw on the West Coast of Newfoundland. A lot of barrens, but once again, not much obstructing your view as you continue to visual out towards the Atlantic Ocean. And we're en route to Clarenville, where we're going to spend 2 nights. Here's another view from Terra Nova National Park. And while we're in Clarenville for 2 nights, this is what we're going to do for the day. We're going to go out to beautiful Cape Bonavista Lighthouse. And Cape Bonavista is a stunning, beautiful community. We're going to go visit the Matthew and see the reconstruction of one of the boats that visited this area. And like I said, here it is, the view, and that building behind is where the Matthew is stored. We're going to have a nice lunch while we're out there. And, once again, talk to fishermen and talk to the locals. The great thing about Newfoundland and Labrador is the authenticity. That's one of the things that I find very different from Alaska, is this wasn't made for tourism. This is everyday life. And it's just, it's a wonderful experience. There's 26 different dialects of English spoken. As we go from community to community, you're going to get a very different accent, and it's always fun. But this epic coastline, I mean, looks like it's sculpted there. It is truly awe-inspiring, as the ads say when you watch them. It is amazing. They have 10 national historic sites. They have 3 provincial historic sites, the many UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and lots to cover while you're in there. Then we go from Bonavista into the historic community of Trinity, and Trinity is kind of, if I had to describe it to locals here, it's kind of like a Sherbrooke village. You can go from home to home, look in it, see the varying homes that are open, but it's a living village. People still live and own homes here, but it's a combination of, you see our motor coach down by the red buildings on your left there. We spend a fair amount of time, and we actually have dinner there before we come back to the hotel, just to have it in the local community. But here's another, the church in Trinity, the lighthouse in the distance, with the walkway to get up to the light. And our guides absolutely love this trip. Danny just witnessed not too long ago one of my tour managers that did the presentation instead of myself, but it's truly one of my favorite places to go, and I just absolutely love it. So back to your hotel, which is in Clarenville. Like I said, you had a 2-night stop, another beautiful view of Trinity and what the community looks like. Incredible. And then when we leave Clarenville, we're going to head to beautiful Brigus. Once again, stunning, breathtaking community. And Brigus has been on the TV lately. It's become one of the shows that I chuckle and laugh about on Home and Garden HGTV. And it's called Rock Solid Builds. And the carpenters are located in Brigus, Newfoundland. And you can imagine the stories and the accents, and as they work on these historic homes, a lot of them, they want to keep them very similar. Like this one is actually in the show, where they wanted to work on the wharf down there and do some repairs on it, because they know it's part of the lore of Newfoundland and Labrador. It's It's one of those houses that you'll see there. But if you get to see rock solid builds, it's an excellent show, and I think it's a great testament for tourism to Newfoundland and Labrador. And after Brigus, we're going to also, I should say, while we're in Brigus, we're going to go to Hawthorne Cottage. And Hawthorne Cottage, I mean, these communities were some of the first English communities in North America. Brigus, along with Heart's Content, early 1600s, actually before Port Royal, and some of those kind of things. They were actually, just English settlements here, and Bob Bartlett was the captain that owned Hawthorne Cottage, and he was known for navigation in the north. So if you know anything about going up into the Arctic, that's what he was famous for. But you'll see the tunnel through the rock there. And when we leave there, then it's on to St. John's, Newfoundland, where we're going to spend 2 nights. You're seeing the city of St. John's here with the colorful houses. St. John's, we're staying at the Delta Hotel, perfectly located in the downtown core, easy walking distance to the waterfront, to shopping, to famous George Street, where you can go out to the varying pubs to have dinner or meet the locals. And while we're there, we always have a city tour of St. John's. This is Jelly Bean Row here, and we'll go around to the waterfront. We're also going to head out to Kitty Vitty area, and you'll see a visual coming up shortly of Kitty Vitty. But it's just an incredible community, and people always enjoy their time in St. John's. Now, as I said, Kitty Vitty is known, this is the Harbor Narrows, I should say, coming up first. And what you're seeing behind the boat on the hillside, that would be Signal Hill. And you'll get a view of Signal Hill here shortly. But that is where the Marconi site was with the transatlantic messaging. And in the very narrows of the harbor, it's a beautiful big harbor, but getting into the harbor during a windy day can be a little more challenge. And so we're going to include all of that on your city tour, including Signal Hill and a visit. And this is Kitty Vitty that I mentioned earlier. Another stunning, you're just outside of St. John's, but a beautiful little entry into the Atlantic. And the green building you see in the picture, that's the Kitty Vitty Brewery, famous for making the iceberg beer. And of course, Newfoundland is also famous for the iceberg vodka, and even their sweet wines. But here, the iceberg beer is in a blue bottle. So it's, a treat that everyone wants to try, some iceberg beer, because they harvest the icebergs in Newfoundland and Labrador to make all of these items. There's a view of Signal Hill with the fortification on the top, looking down over the narrows of the harbor and the main harbor and back towards the city of St. John's. You'll have some free time to explore when you're in St. John's. And then, of course, we're going to go down to Witless Bay. And Witless Bay is our third boat tour. If you haven't counted, we did one in St. Anthony, one in Grossmore National Park, and this is the third. So you have 3 opportunities for whales, icebergs, puffins. But this one goes out to the bird sanctuary in Witless Bay. And this is the largest puffin colony. And a puffin is a seabird that lives at sea. It only comes in during the summer months to nest and have its young. So this whole island will be completely covered in puffins. And of course, you usually get to see whales there as well. And there's those beautiful puffin birds, the Atlantic puffin. And while you're down there, of course, on the boat, the Gatherall family, Michael Gatherall and his mother Rosemary and his brother Al will all be around. They have a great gift shop once again. And when these gift shops in Newfoundland are authentically made items, you're going to get a chance to buy Labrador Rite. I love my Labrador Rite rings that I've secured over the years, and it's just a beautiful spot. And then from Bay Bulls and Witless Bay, we're going to head over to Cape Spear National Historic Site. There's 2 lighthouses actually in Cape Spear. This is one of them. You'll have some time to walk the trails and visit the lighthouse. But this is the most easterly point in North America. I always say this is where the sun comes up first. I always like to tell people from away, Newfoundland and Labrador even has their own time zone. It's a half hour different than Atlantic time. So, from this is where it all happens first. And you see the steps here as you go up to the other lighthouse, but it's a beautiful spot. The views back towards St. John's and then the open Atlantic are incredible. Now, our 13-day tour would normally end back at the hotel that night, and then the next day you'd have a free afternoon this afternoon, and the next day you would fly home. But on this particular tour this year, we are now leaving by motor coach, coming back across the island to Port aux Basques, doing the overnight ferry again, and then back to Halifax. So that concludes the first Circle Newfoundland and Labrador trip. Now, I mentioned here we also have a Newfoundland getaway that we're hoping to do this year, which is just 5 days, 4 nights. It's a flyover for 4 nights just on the East Coast in St. John. So I'm not going to go into any detail on that, but it's 4 days of touring, all here on the East Coast. You'll still go down to Bay Bulls and do the boat tour, and of course, tour the city and do lots of little trips out of St. John's. But it's just an option for those that don't have time for a longer tour. And then a new tour that we just created last week when I was at a conference. We decided to make something very different. We're calling it Living on the Edge, Newfoundland and Labrador, and it's 4 nights in St. John's and 4 nights in Gros Morne and Cowhead. So basically, you're not going all the way up the Northern Peninsula. You're not going over to Labrador. You're going to tour more regionally on both sides of the province for a nice 8-day, 9-day getaway. And we'll be flying into St. John's and out of Deer Lake. And, including most of the stuff that we've talked about on the tour. And now I'm going to jump over to some Nova Scotia day trips that we have coming up this year. And once again, type in your questions so we have them at the end. But our day trips, basically we're doing a number of different trips. The Annapolis Valley Winery day trip. So if you're from Halifax or somewhere's close to Halifax, we can pick you up like Sackville. We're going to go down on June 24th and then again on July 22nd. And we always do 3 wineries. And we include lunch in our program. So it's a nice full day. We usually leave around 8:30 in the morning. We're back about 5:30 in the afternoon or early evening. And generally each one is very different. We will do 3 different wineries each time. And we always do lunch, usually in the Wolfville area on one trip and then Halls Harbor on the other, because that's another scenic gem that many people have never been to. Another day trip that we're doing is up to Stellarton and Pictou. We'll visit the Museum of Industry, Hector Heritage Key, and once again, a great little day trip getaway out of Halifax. And our hope is that all of these, once we get the current situation straightened out, this is an option to give you a little taste of travel. And last year I hosted and guided them all myself. We had an amazing time, once again, following all public health protocols. We're also doing the Glooscap Trail. This one will go up to the Truro area into Masstown. We'll stop at Masstown Market, go up to Joggins, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site here in Nova Scotia. We'll have a docent take us out or a guide take us out on the beach there, and you'll get to pick up and hold in your hand some fossils, and he'll talk about that. We'll have lunch and like I said, and then come back to Halifax as a little getaway. Another day trip that we have for September is just a day trip down to beautiful Lunenburg and Mahone Bay, where we'll have some time we'll do a walking tour in Lunenburg. We always stop up at the Academy and then walk down to the waterfront to the Fisheries Museum. Then we'll spend some time in beautiful Mahone Bay before coming back. And, once again, a great getaway. Then we're off to another day trip that was when we presented last week, but this is a day trip over to Sable Island to see the ponies and to look at the beautiful landscape. And this trip is either done by helicopter or plane. And this is, a much more expensive venture simply because of the air involved and the fact that it's very limited on how many people can visit every year. A certain number of dates are designated. And there is also an option to go over by boat, which would be a 4-day to get over and back. Now, Nova Scotia group tours that we have planned for this year It's an Eastern Shore getaway with 2 nights at beautiful Liscombe Lodge. If you've not been to Liscombe, absolutely stunning spot. It's rustic. The river there is phenomenal. Even if you weren't to do anything, just to sit and relax, it's a beautiful getaway. But on this one, we're going to do Shearbrook Village, and we're going to go up as far as Antigonish on a day outing. So it's a nice little trip, and we'll be doing that, the Antigonish route, on the way back when we come back to Halifax to loop us around. We also have a hiking adventure. This is a small group, maximum 6 with a guide, and it's a 5-day, 4-night hiking. And it's not for those that have mobility issues. You're actually going to go out and walk and hike, but it's there's going to be a number of nice walks each day as part of the trip. So a lot of the Volks sport groups or that kind of thing enjoy this kind of a get about, but it's, like I said, very limited to 6 people. We have a Northumberland Shore to Pictou Lodge, which is a 1-night stay at Pictou Lodge, just 2 days. So once again, those that are a little more nervous or whatever, this is a great start to reintroducing travel again. And we're going to do the Pictou area with Hector and on one day, and then we're going to do the Yost Winery and Malagash and that kind of stuff in the other day. So it's a beautiful little getaway. And then we're off to our South Shore getaway to Oak Island Resort. That's a 2-night, 3-day program at the end of August. Totally refurbished Oak Island. It looks amazing. I was just down to see everything last September, see those renovations. While we're there, we're going to go out on the boat tour out around Oak Island with the company that has the pontoon boats. And he's a character in the show Curse of Oak Island. It's very popular in America. And that'll be included along with walking tours in Mahone Bay Time and Lunenburg. Now off to the lighthouses of Nova Scotia. This one is going to go to some of our most iconic ones, starting in Halifax, heading down through the Annapolis Valley, doing lighthouses on the way to Yarmouth, including Cape Horseshoe. And then we're coming up the South Shore, doing lighthouses, including Peggy's Cove, but many others on the way up. And then going along the Eastern Shore, and then wrapping back around. So it is a great getaway if you're a lighthouse enthusiast. Last year, our Celtic Colors Festival Tour couldn't operate as a Celtic Colors Tour, but we did it as a Fall Colors Tour. I hosted it. Once again, we had 30 people. It sold out within days of me putting it on. Everyone was dying to do something. We had a blast. It's 3 nights at the Inverary Inn in Bedeck. We went to Fortress Louisburg. We did the Cabot Trail. We did the Bell Museum. We did stops in Pictou for the Hector Heritage. We did the Yost Vineyard. But this one, if it can go, if the Celtic Colors Festival happens this year, it'll be all the concerts around the Celtic Festival as opposed to what we did last year. So just keep that in mind. Other trips that we have coming up, every year we do 15 departures of the Atlantic Maritimes. This is a tour that does all 3 maritime provinces in a figure-8 design. The first part focusing on the Bay of Fundy. So starting in Halifax, it does Moncton and then down to St. John and then back around to Digby Pines, back to Halifax, and then off to Prince Edward Island, Cape Breton Island, and back to Halifax. So it can be sold as 2 separate 1-week trips or combined into this 13-day adventure. Another great tour that we have scheduled for this year is the Acadian communities of both New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island. Absolutely stunning areas, less visited. What you're seeing here is La Pays de la Sanguine in Bucktouche, New Brunswick, but we do all of that area, as well as the Acadian communities of Prince Edward Island, along with some of the other must-sees that aren't Acadian, but you can't go to Prince Edward Island and not see them. So, the plan is that hopefully we'll have some people do that. And then another tour that we have scheduled to Prince Edward Island is for the North Rustico Country Music Festival that happens every year in August. 3 nights we'll stay, we'll do the festival, we'll go to the varying concerts, we'll go to Stan Rogers, Stomp and Tom's Museum, and do other sightseeing while we're there. But once again, we have all these gems in our backyard and no shortage of things to do. And then hopefully last year we had a lot of people signed up for this and we couldn't go because of the lockdown. But for those that family can't get home, a lot of them faced that last year. We have Christmas in St. Andrews. It's a 4-night, 5-day getaway where we'll actually be there for Christmas Day. We'll have Christmas dinner together. We have some activities planned. We're going to do a historic tour of St. Andrews. We'll visit St. John. We're going to go to Gannon Chocolate. So there's a number of things there, even an art class where you can paint. So for those that are disappointed that family can't come, this is a great option. And other great tours that we have are Magdalen Islands. We're hoping it's going to go in August, that becomes part of our bubble. And that is access through Prince Edward Island. We have Discover the Gaspé Peninsula in August. We also have Canada by Rail in September, and then our Niagara Wine Country and Quebec City tour that I will be hosting in October if we can travel. And the other one that's been very popular, a lot of bookings already for, is St. Pierre Miquelon is trying to become part of the Atlantic Canada bubble. So I know that was kind of a speed dating run through everything that we can do with a concentration on Newfoundland. And Danny's thinking, how can he talk that long? But it is my love, Atlantic Canada. Everyone always says to me, I've traveled much of the world, and what's your favorite spot that you've gone? And I always said, well, oddly enough, it's here. I love Atlantic Canada as much as anywhere in the world. Newfoundland and Labrador, I always say it's the Cabot Trail on steroids. And that's no disrespect to the beautiful Cabot Trail, but it is one of those beautiful, beautiful places. I mean, even where I'm from in Wolfville, when you come down Avonport Mountain and look out over the Minas Basin and Cape Blomidon, you're hard pressed to get a better visual than that anywhere you go in the world. So Danny, over to you. What did I leave out?
Lots, I'm sure. I do have a few questions, but thank you very much, Richard. That was a very enjoyable presentation on just a small portion of what Atlantic Tours and Travel offers, I'm sure. And in particular, the information you gave us on the Newfoundland and Labrador tour. But there were a few things that popped into my head as you were talking. And one of the things is that over the last 10 or 12 years, my wife and I, together with her mother, have done a lot of day trips and overnight trips around Nova Scotia, and have discovered a lot of the places that you've just talked about. The main difference being that as a driver, my eyes have to be on the road most of the time. So being on a coach certainly would allow, me, for example, to be able to take in safely everything that's visible from the coach. So, I'm certainly very impressed with the itineraries that you've just shown. Just the other couple of questions.
Well, the other thing that allows, Danny, is that when you don't have to drive, because I mean, the person driving can't see everything. The passengers can, but they can't. But the other thing is, it's nice every now and then to have a nice glass of wine at lunch. Or so, I mean, there's all of those benefits. And in Newfoundland and Labrador, I always worry about the fact that there's so many moose.
Yeah.
And so, to me, being in a motor coach, and I really don't like people out driving after dark over there. And so, it's just for everyone's protection, and you miss out so much when you don't have the commentary. Our guides give incredible commentary. They know their stuff, and it's not the same experience unless you have someone else that's going to research in your family to tell you all those stories.
Yeah, that's interesting. What you did mention about the moose in Newfoundland. I remember reading someplace that there were actually more moose than human beings in Newfoundland. And I've seen pictures of encounters between cars and moose, and it's not a pretty sight. So I would certainly prefer to be on a bus in a situation like that too, in terms of safety. And certainly your vineyard tours, that's made in heaven, really. You can go and you can sample different wines and not have to worry about, being over the limit. and being picked up by the police and, you know, that sort of thing. So again, bus coach tours is the way to go. The Come From Away documentary that you mentioned, I haven't seen it myself, but I've seen little bits of it and I've seen the documentary, and it would just move me to tears. So,
Well, it's
you
an
know,
actual musical, Danny. It's
yes,
playing
so
on Broadway. So
I
on our New York tour every year that we go down and do our getaway to New York, we haven't been able to do it last year. It was the first year we don't. We've never ever repeated a musical, but we've repeated it 3 times, included because the musical Come From Away, and Beverly Bass, who's one of the main characters in that, I got to meet her at one of the shows, and she was the female pilot on one of the planes, and was the first female pilot with American Airlines, and the first to all have an all-female crew. And so she's gone probably now by about 100 times. When I met her, she had been 80 sometimes, and it is a heart. It's just a beautiful story. It's incredible. And the other thing that before we finish tonight, is I also want to mention that we have reduced deposits on right now for any of our trips. The deposit for any of the ones that we operate ourselves by Atlantic Tours is only $50 per person to secure your spot, because there's a lot of people say, oh, I want to go if we can go, but you really don't have a booking unless you have a booking. So all we're asking for is $50. If we can't go, it's refundable. We're absolutely not going to go unless we can safely do it. And the other thing is, if you can either get that $50 back if we don't go, or you can roll it to another trip. So there's no problem with any of that. And on the Newfoundland tour, there's also a $300 discount that we're doing this year on that particular trip. So once again, if you want to lock in that savings, it's a pretty good offer. And if you do the 1 week versions, and I mentioned that briefly at the beginning, the 1 week versions are, you'd leave from Halifax, you do the west coast of Newfoundland, and when we leave to go to Gander, to the Aviation Museum, we would drop you at the airport that day in Deer Lake, and you'd fly back to Halifax. So it'd be 1 week, but we have a number of people that will also do the other direction. They'll fly into Deer Lake, join us for the Grossmorn part of it, and then finish the trip and fly home from St. John's. So those are the 2 options if you don't have time for the 13 days.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, Richard. Yeah, I found the names, a lot of the names of the towns in Newfoundland to be very intriguing. I think that would make an interesting research topic in itself. Yeah, and I think
well, both the Brigus and Heart's Content are on Conception Bay. so I mean, Conception Bay leads into the Atlantic Ocean. There's lots of interesting names there.
Yeah, well, the Quiddy or Quiddy Vidi, that sounds like Latin.
Quiddy Vidi, and then there's there's just some Placentia Bay. Yes. I mean, go on and on. There's an endless supply. And then when you do it with the Newfoundland accents, the varying accents from community to community, it's very gives you quite a chuckle.
Yeah. I just want to take a moment now, Richard, to talk a little bit about what's coming up next week. 6:30 Atlantic time on Tuesday, May the 4th. We have a presentation with Star Clippers, which is one of the very few ocean sailing cruising vessels that is run by sail. Also has engines, of course, but the particular topic that's going to be offered next week will be cruising under sail in the Mediterranean. So Richard, thank you very much for the time that we've spent prepping for this. It's been very enjoyable, and of course for the presentation itself. And I want to remind viewers that certainly I can help you book any of these tours that we have talked about this evening, and certainly would go through Richard, and he would be very helpful. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to pass them along. I don't know if we have any questions, Richard, or not. Typically,
I'm not seeing anything more in the question box, so
you must have done a great job.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Danny. It was a great pleasure to spend my evening with your guests, and hopefully we'll be doing some business soon together.
I certainly hope so. Hope it opens up. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.